welcome back. Or maybe you didn't leave. Maybe you've just been here. Anyway, right now we are going to talk about choosing art styles and doing your market research using Amazon. So first what we're going to do, there's a few different ways to get to bestseller categories on Amazon. Let's just start here at Bestsellers. And as you can see, we'll close all the categories up on the left. We're going to select books. So this is showing you Amazon bestsellers across the entire store, all genres, all age levels, you know it. So as you can see, when I'm recording this, what is popular in the news. But we are going to go, like, if you're looking at children's books, I can just tell you there's not a whole lot of trends with children's books because they're just always so unique. Let's go to mysteries and detectives. So as you can see, like, these are very top level. Oh, I didn't back out of kids. Okay, so when you go directly into categories inside kids, then you start to see a little bit more consistency. So this is a good example of how if you look at like middle grade fiction illustrations, they're going to look a lot different than what you see on adult books that have illustrated covers. So there's just a quick look. But on the left here, we're going to go back to books, and then let's go look at mystery, thriller, and suspense. So this is mystery, thriller, and suspense all together. As you can see, there's kind of all the same type of books here. And we're going to go all the way down into thrillers because there was a mix. So as you can see, thrillers and mystery tend to have a lot of sans serif fonts. You'll see a lot of neon type of colors. Sometimes you'll see like these torn pages. You see a lot of text built into the scene. Like here on this eerie basin, it's kind of looks like a sign on the building. If you look at Cold Island, things kind of fade into the background. And where's one of the ones I wanted to show? Okay, here, Stephen King's The Long Walk. You can see the title is perspectively down on the road. And this is just a great example, as we mentioned, how some big authors, it's their name selling the book. So here, like, you just see Stephen King, like, you have to actually look for that title. But that's a popular thing when you get here. So once you're in thrillers and suspense, you can subgenre down. So let's go look at psychological thrillers. And this, again, if you think about it, like, you may see books that you don't think belong in a category. This is just kind of where they're getting auto-filled. So sometimes you just have to use your best knowledge that, oh wait, this is not actually going to look like this. Okay, so this over here, the inmate, that's another example of the text being in the perspective on the floor. And then a few days ago, I had to re-record this because things went haywire with my previous recording. But the other day, one of the ones on here was an ocean scene with the words built in, but it's not here today. But if we look at A Flicker in the Dark, you can see like the text kind of looks like it's flickering. So it's great if you can kind of build imagery in that works with your title. So here, if we look at Beautiful Ugly, that's another one. You get that torn art. And as you can see, these bestseller lists will combine formats. So sometimes you'll see repeats because you have like audiobooks and Kindle and paperback all mixed in one. So if you see repeats, that's usually why. You can start with like, there are times you can separate out Kindle books. So sometimes it's good to look that way. Here, like, this is a good example of kind of like an eerie, like you have multi-dimension, you see these stairs and then you see the mirror with the girl in it, like, that gives that intense, like, that's kind of spooky. And then you see the bright yellow. Another thing with thrillers, you often see these dark scenes with a house and you see the glow in windows. That's a very popular style. Again, here's one, the text is built in. You can see it's like on a bookshelf. This one, the words are stuck on the stairs, like building up the steps, except you read top to bottom. And I actually have another example of why you want to keep in mind placement, because sometimes you may think, oh, like, I want it to look like we're going up the stairs, but if you put your words like bottom to top, people are going to read your title backwards, because while like the vision might be there that you could read bottom up, not everyone will see it that way. Okay, so let's go to another genre. So you can see we have to back out of here to top level, let's go into romance. And then let's click on clean and wholesome, because I know there's a lot of you in here. And as you can see, like, you get a lot of glowy covers. If it's real images or realistic close to that, they kind of just have this glow to them, if you can kind of see what I mean. This type of cover will have this like nice serif lowercase title font. So look at your comps and see if that's what they're doing. You may want to follow suit. If you see more like women's fiction, you're going to see a lot of houses, islands, and this is kind of the format. You usually see like a fairly large author name, and then the title, and very in-depth scenery. Sometimes it's more of an object, like this one you have the depth with the benches are up close. Sometimes it's like a bike, but you often do have depth in the distance. As you can see, like, there is an illustrated cover here, and here you're not going to see as many of those in like women's fiction. Like, sometimes you do see them. Again, I'm on the clean and wholesome, so you have multiple genres coming through. And so again, you're going to see kind of this glowy thing. You will see quite a bit of illustrated covers when you get into the contemporary genre. Remember, this is a mix. When you're looking at more historical books within the clean and wholesome, you're going to see a lot of people. They're going to be well clothed. You won't really see seductive poses like you see on your spicier, like Regency romances. As we keep going, there's stuff all over the place. And then I'm going to show you another way to get into bestseller lists. So as you can see, we're fairly limited in clicking down to specific categories when you're here. So if you know your comps, I would go into them. And just a side note, so Christian romantic suspense, you're usually going to have like this landscape. You're going to have the sans serif font. You will see a lot of gradients on the title, and you're going to have someone like up in front. So if it's one main character, they're usually pretty close to the front like this, with a background behind them. If it's a couple, they're usually floating in the sky and then have a landscape underneath. And that's just kind of what you see usually in the Christian romantic suspense. So you have to remember there's these qualifiers, because if you look at mainstream romantic suspense, they look a little different. So anyway, if you go to a book and you scroll down to product details, you'll see the bestseller ranks, and it will give you the top 3 categories that they're ranked in. So if we go click on Christian mystery and suspense, which is very difficult to navigate through straight from the bestseller page, this is why it's great to know your market and know who you're advertising against, because it's a shortcut. So as you can see, we see lots of bold fonts. There's sans serif, simple, clean. We see lots of people and backgrounds. So you will see a lot of more see-through text. This one's a little harder to read. This one more chance. So generally you're going to want to increase the opacity just a little bit. But here we see like the text is kind of fading away. And if we keep going, kind of see a lot more of the same. And the rankings have actually changed quite a bit since the last time I looked. These are looking a lot more like mainstream romantic suspense than like your typical Christian. But as you can see, like mystery and suspense and Christian books are here. And again, this is actually mystery and suspense rankings. This was not the, let me go back. This was not romantic suspense. So if we go back here, and then this one's ranked in military romance. There's a lot of interesting things on military, because military romance can just, if any book has military, like, you can get in that category. But generally speaking, if the military part's the main theme, you're going to see a lot of men who are very buff right on the front cover. If they're spicier, you're going to see a lot of abs, as you can see here. Again, you don't normally see a lot of illustrated covers. These ones are probably here because they are, it's kind of like a subplot, or it's just not the main genre. So that is one way to get to more specific things. let's say you write a lot of books like this. We're going to scroll down. Side note, A+ content is a good way to go to personalize your book pages and increase your brand visibility and like just personalize and you look more professional, right? Okay, so we're going to go here to small town and rural, and you are going to see a big mix again because it's kind of a broad term, and it's just, that's why you want to know your comps. So you can kind of see, okay, so this is kind of the style I was explaining earlier where you have like floating people in landscape. This one had a twist on it where it had this watercolor look that was a trend for a little tiny bit. I feel like this cover kind of started it. But again, like this one's ranked in romantic suspense. And here we are on full-blown romantic suspense. They are a lot bolder. We see that neon in the dark. We're seeing more text space, or like you have your sexy men and couples. You have some symbols, but you get a lot of those neon colors a lot. So just things to keep in mind. Those are the types of trends you want to look for. And let's go to workplace romance. I feel like a lot of workplace romances are going to be your contemporary romance that will be an illustrated cover. And that's like me talking like, oh, hey, this is what I would expect to see. Then you can click on it and you're like, oh, maybe not. But here we see a lot of illustrated covers. And this is where I can show you there's a whole variety of illustrated covers. So we have like our cozy covers here, very detailed. We have, this one's kind of a mix between like illustrated and flat vector. This one's heavily illustrated. This is a pretty common style right now in the vector space where you have gradients, you have some details that show shading. When vector covers first started getting popular, they were the very simple, more like this, where you have like faceless characters and very little detail. And those are still around, but I would say we have moved more into a more detailed vector or fully illustrated, which the Love Hypothesis is illustrated. We see like those outlines, and it's a lot more sketch-based. So just keep those things in mind when you're looking. You're going to want to be consistent across your books. And this is where it's important that if you're hiring an illustrator, it's great if they are the same illustrator across your series so they have a similar art style. If you're using the stock illustrations and vectors, I'm going to go over that in just a minute of like tips for how to shop for those. So again, like the Ellie Hazelwood, after Love Hypothesis, we have Love Theoretically, not necessarily in that order, but like this similar illustration style. There is a background showing where they are before it was science lab. This is a library. It's semi-detailed, and then we have like this more sketch-based look to the illustration. So those are the types of things you want to look for. And I do want to get to women's fiction because, again, I know that will be another popular genre here, which is under literature and fiction. Then we go to women's fiction, and we're going to look at contemporary. So contemporary, you are seeing a lot more of this kind of illustrated look. We have a whole slew of things. So we do have what's called discrete covers becoming fairly popular. Again, that doesn't really apply to women's fiction, but like because of Emily Henry books, like we see a lot of covers like hers now. The Colleen Hoover, we have more of these objects. We got a lot of the floral and things like that, which this is, again, contemporary women's fiction. These are kind of what you're going for here. And as you can see, like they actually do look pretty similar. So if you know your book falls in line with these, that's what you're going to want to look for. If we go the friendship route, you're going to see a lot more of those scenes like these books. And again, sometimes Amazon's groupings are a little different. And you want to check frequently because these do change quite a bit. But, like, these ones, I would say give more of a kind of that thriller vibe. So this is something to keep in mind, because if we go and look at this, and we look, yeah, this is about a frazzled ghostwriter, an aspiring novelist, and magical world. Like, as you can see, like, it follows that women's fiction storyline, but it gives more of, like, that darker look. And see, here we go. This is top of the bestseller list with psychological suspense novels is what this author got famous for. So, as you can see, like, this is definitely mystery, thriller, and suspense. If you look at their bestseller ranks, that's where they're ranking the top at. So that's where you have to be careful. Like, sometimes it's not showing you the most accurate collection, because it's also based just on the algorithm. So if someone's usually doing, like, reading this type of style, you'll see it a lot. So if we go to, like, divorced women's fiction, this is where we see a lot of lighthouses and beaches because people are escaping. And as I mentioned earlier, you have, like, if you look at Katie Winters, that format's used a lot where you have the big name and then title. Sometimes it's flipped and it's the title and then big name on the bottom. But as you can see, you get a lot in common, like Rachel Hanna, Kristen Hanna. We're seeing a lot of names at the top. Okay, so I think that's enough going through titles. Hopefully that helps just get you thinking critically. Just really quickly, if I go to books and then bestsellers and more, you can look at what is ranking on Amazon charts and New York Best Time Sellers. And this is just to show, you can see what's ranking, but these are usually going to be traditionally published books, which have a lot more leeway on how they sell books. So they're not always the best books to follow and copy. They can be if you're in a very hot genre and market right now. But just keep in mind, indie books usually sell a little differently than traditional books. So that's that. Moving on for just art styles in general, you're going to run into a lot more with illustrated vector covers. You want to be careful when you're choosing your stock, especially if you are going the stock route. And that is because there are different drawing styles. So here we have a decent amount of detail. If you look at these have more of that lanky body, like we have kind of awkward proportions and like really long legs. So if you choose this on your first book, you're going to want to make sure you keep that going or use them within your series. This is kind of another one that's like kind of a whimsical body shape. And this, I would say, is more of a juvenile look. Like, the characters here don't look like YA, but that's not generally the style you will look for on an adult cover. The actual bodies themselves could work. It's more the faces that change it. And if you are editing your own, like, that's something you could adjust. Again, these are more like what you'd see for ads. Like, if you remember, like, 4 years ago, this is kind of like Facebook did this style for ads. Like, everyone was advertising with these super long legs. So these are a lot more extreme than that other one I showed you. These are not what you would normally see on a book cover. This one, if you were to choose a style like this, you'd want to make sure that you have that white outline continuous throughout your series, because that's a very distinctive style. If we look here, this is heavily illustrated. So you're not going to want to do a really simple vector mixed with this. Like, if you're using different characters, you're going to want them to be kind of, or as close to the same look as possible. Here's another set, and then these are like your really flat vectors. So this is really the style that you would see a lot on simple vector covers. And a tip for, I'm going to come right back to this one, or it's right there. Okay. A tip for shopping for stock vectors is, if you find something you like, so this is particularly Adobe stock, if you click the person who created it, you can go to all of their drawings. So as you can see, they have a lot of stuff on here. But generally speaking, their portfolio should be pretty similar. So this was a bad one to click on. As you can see, like, they have a lot of icons and stuff. But once you click into them through Adobe Stock, you can see we are looking at their portfolio. So this is where you can just search people, and then that should pull up all the people they draw. So as you can see, like, I was like, oh, we should see similar styles. So they kind of actually draw in two styles. So they have the ones that kind of have just those dotted and simple face features, and then we have like the more flat vector. So the reason I'm showing you this is you can see, like, this is one. We can find more people that look just like it. So if you just need to find more characters, that's a good way to shop for them. So like this one, we're like, oh, that's kind of a bust. But let's go back to this illustration look. It's like, oh, I want more like that for future books. You can go look at their other illustrations and see, oh, like, these are very similar styles. So if you have different books that could work for this, like that pool scene could be cool. But just not like these are premium ones, so they cost more than your standard. That's just a good way. So like if we were like, okay, I need to keep this white outline throughout, if I click into this person's portfolio, am I going to see more of that? I don't know. So let's see, let's like add people here. And there we go. See, they have the similar look, but then it's like, oh, that's a different crop. So if we want to use these guys, you may need to crop the whiter people higher up. And like we have these girls in swimsuits, just like, so these are the things just to keep in mind when you're choosing art styles. And we want to make sure we're not mixing within. So some of the same principles apply when you're choosing images. You're going to want lighting to be similar. You're going to want the haze and clarity to be the same. You can't really, like if you're really hazy in your person and crisp background, that's just not going to make logical sense. So just some things to keep in mind.